Hi everyone, my name is Lothar and I want to thank you very much for taking a few minutes to learn about how the Micro Focus File Governance Suite can help you clean up all of your old files. Before we get into the actual File Governance Suite, let's take a few minutes to talk about why you would want to clean up. There might be some misconceptions around this that we want to clear up first. You might get some pushback saying storage is cheap. I can just go to Best Buy and get a couple of terabytes of storage for just a few $100s. Well, it's not just the disk, the cost of the disk that you need to consider. There are other things that must be included to calculate the overall cost. There's backups. If you keep increasing your storage, eventually you're going to run into a problem backing up all of that data. As you add more storage to your systems, you have to consider maintenance. Patching and updating, the firmware and the operating system of whatever is hosting all of that storage for you. As you increase the number of devices in your data center, there's power and cooling to consider. There's cabinet and the host of that. If you have a SAN or a NAS, there's a frame that is required to host all of that storage. And if you're using direct attached storage to your servers, well, eventually you're going to run out of capacity on that, and you need to increase that capacity as well. Floor space is also a consideration. As you add more devices, your floor space will keep increasing, so that is also a concern. And then there's the complexity of all of that storage. Are you spanning volumes across multiple disks and those kinds of things that you need to consider? And we have some customers who outsource their storage. They have a third party that provides that storage to them and charges them on a gigabyte, terabyte basis per month. So as you keep increasing that storage, your costs keep going up, and that needs to be factored into the overall equation as you consider adding more storage. We live in an increasingly regulated world, and you need to consider how those regulations would affect your business. You may be required to archive or delete information after a set period of time. Keeping things around indefinitely and doing nothing to clean up your file system may actually be against the law, and you need to look into that and consider that inside of your organization. When it comes to your data, you should also consider security. If you have confidential or compromising information lying around and you were to get hacked or breached in some way, all of that would be exposed. Consider the Sony hack of a few years ago, where all of their confidential emails and other information were leaked to the public. There's also your internal users to consider. You wouldn't want them to stumble across some old confidential or compromising information. So, as the saying goes, out of sight, out of mind. And lastly, there's freedom of information or access to information requests that you need to consider. Provided you're not breaking any regulations about cleaning up in the first place, if you have a document policy and procedure for cleaning up, you could be exempt for potentially searching through decades of old information. All right, so let's get started with our cleanup. We're going to start with File Reporter. It is sort of an inventory tool for your data. It will tell you what you have, how long you've had it, when was the last time it was used, and so on. So we're going to start here and take a look at some reports that we can generate from within this tool. With the information that Storage Manager collects, one of the things that you can do is run the Data Analytics client. This isn't so much a report, but more of a real-time view of your data. In this heat map view that we have here, we can see the files that we have on our file system, the size of those files indicated by the boxes, and in this view, the age of those files indicated by the colors of those boxes. If we zoom in here, we can see the legend for all of the different colors. And as you can see, we have certain files dating back to 2002. If we wanted to, we could also click on one of these files to view its details. While the Data Analytics client is interesting and definitely shows us that we have some older files in our environment, it's more of a visual tool and doesn't help us easily identify which of those files are problems for us. File Reporter has a number of built-in reports, and the first one that we're going to look at is a file aging report. This is what we call a summary report and just shows us the age ranges of those files. At the beginning of the report, we get this graph indicating the top 10 file year ages of those files, ranked by the amount of space that they occupy on our file system. So this is not the complete ages of all of our files, it's just the top 10, again ranked by the number or the amount of space that they occupy on our file system. The next page of the report does in fact show us the complete date ranges of all of the files on our file system, the size of those files on the file system, and the number of files on our file system. Again, this report is simply a summary report. If I wanted to, I could click on one of these years and drill down and see all of the files that make up that year, but we're going to go into a bit more detail than that. We want a range of years. We don't want to see just 1 year at a time. Another type of report that is built into File Reporter is a date age detailed report. Within this report, I've defined that I'm going to look for files that are older than 10 years based on my previous report, and I will ask for all of the details of those files in terms of their location and so on. So let's take a look at that report. Here we can see a page of the report, and we can see things like the storage location, file name, the owner of the file, when it was created, when it was last modified and accessed, and so on. But we can also identify a few red flags here. First of all, some of these file locations are in places like London, Atlanta, departments like marketing, engineering, IT, other locations like headquarters, and I can see things like confidential projects. While I may be in IT and could probably take care of the IT department, although that's in Atlanta and I'm not in Atlanta, so I don't necessarily know some of those files, basically it identifies to me that there's a lot of files here that I don't really know anything about, and maybe I'm not the best qualified person to actually take care of those files, to get rid of those files. I'm going to need some input or some assistance from the actual data owners of these files to clean these up and get rid of them. I could take this report and send it to the appropriate file or data owners, asking them to clean it up, but as you can imagine, that would probably not get a very favorable response. They would have to look through the file, figure out which of these files that are on this list are theirs, and then go out to the file system, find those files, and delete them. Chances are this request would get ignored. I'm going to instead rerun this report as an unformatted report and export it as a CSV file, and as you'll see in a minute, this will make it easy for them to actually act on this and clean up those files I need them to get rid of. Now that we have our list of files that we know we need to take some sort of action on, we're going to switch over to File Dynamics. File Dynamics is the other half of the File Governance Suite, and it allows things like the data owner to perform actions on files. One of those actions, or one of the things that we'll be focused on this time, is to perform a cleanup of those files. Here we can see the File Dynamics Data Owner client. I'm currently logged in as a user by the name of Amanda Cox, and as you can see here, I have a couple of different features available to me. The first one is My Data. My Data allows me to see the files that I am responsible for and have access to and have used recently. The next one is Epic Data Protection, and this allows me to recover from files that have been accidentally or maliciously deleted by things like ransomware, or simply files that have been overwritten. If this feature is of interest to you, I have done a video on that recently, and the link to that is in the description. This time, however, we're going to focus on workloads. And the workload allows me to perform an action on a CSV file, on a list of files that are contained within a CSV file. And I'm simply going to drag and drop that CSV file that the administrator has previously created through File Reporter and drop it into the File Dynamics Data Owner client. As the file is being loaded into the Data Owner client, File Dynamics will parse through the list and figure out only those files which I have been deemed responsible for. As we can see from the list here, I can see the location of those files, which happens to be in marketing, which is indeed my area of responsibility, as well as other things such as the date the file was created, modified, or accessed, and the file owner. If I wanted to, I could enter some kind of a search criteria here to filter this list further, but in this case, we're just going to select all and get rid of everything. Once selected, I now have an option to copy these files somewhere, maybe for archival purposes, to put onto a CD or DVD or something like that. I could move them somewhere, maybe some secondary storage or some cheaper storage or the cloud or whatever the case may be. But in this case, we're going to go ahead with delete. The File Dynamics engine or server is what will actually do the cleanup. I'm simply providing a list, a pre-filtered list of the files that I want to perform an action on that I am responsible for, as well as an action, in this case, delete. So I have to give my job a name. I'll click on OK or Next, and then I have an option to receive an email once the job is complete. I'll put in my email address and click on Submit. If I wanted to, I could monitor the status of this, even though I am going to get an email. But I can go back to workloads and select jobs, and I can see the jobs that have been completed in the past, as well as my job that is currently pending. If I am running the data protection client, I will get a pop-up notifying me that the job is complete. And if I refresh the screen, I will see that it is indeed complete. And lastly, just to be thorough, I'll switch over to my email client and show you that there is indeed an email indicating that the job has been completed by the server. Let's take a quick minute just to summarize what we've talked about today. So today we've shown you how the Micro Focus File Governance Suite can help you clean up all of your old files. To start with, we used File Reporter to inventory the data to figure out which files were old and unused. And then we took the export from that, or a report from the File Reporter, and passed that off to the data owners who used the File Dynamics Data Owner client to actually clean up the files. They are the ones who know if the files are important and need to be kept or can be removed. So overall, the File Governance Suite can help you get your data under control. So with that, I want to thank you very much for your time today and your interest in our File Governance Suite. If this topic is of interest to you or important to you, please subscribe to our channel and be notified of future updates.